There is a trend among many anti-car and urbanist YouTubers who think everyone should live in a box in a dense city, pay rent all their life, never own anything and only travel to where the train or the bus goes. This video will be the first part of a series where I explore the greatness of the American suburbs and the freedom offered by one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century. The personal automobile. There is a misconception that the American suburbs are made up of cookie-cutter homes that are identical to each other, and that cities are somehow full of each home and apartment building being totally unique from each other. Many of these YouTubers equate the suburbs as something of a recent phenomenon that happened after World War II and that before the war everyone happily lived in the cities. While there is some truth to this misconception, the reality is that it's the older suburban homes, especially the ones in the cities, that are virtually identical to each other. Another misconception is that the suburbs are full of ugly stroads devoid of trees and greenery. The word strode is a made-up word to describe a large road in cities and towns with spread-out businesses. Many anti-car YouTubers will show you a clip of a few square miles and make it seem like entire towns look like this. It's not true, and most of the suburbs have more greenery and wildlife than any city in the United States. The American suburbs can be divided into four somewhat distinct styles. I don't know if these are the official designations, but from my research they all seem to fall in four categories that overlap each other in time and style. The first style of suburbs are the pre-car and pre-rail small towns outside the first American cities. Many of the smaller towns on the East Coast date back to before the American Revolution, along with parts of the outer boroughs of New York City. These suburbs are mainly characterized as being walkable with sidewalks in most of the town, and the homes will be on smaller plots of land, with many of them being close together. Since these towns were first settled prior to the invention of the automobile, everything needed to be closer together and within walking distance. They will almost always have a town center with businesses and restaurants, or they will border towns like these so the people could have walked short distances to buy the things they needed and to socialize with neighbors. These towns will usually consist of homes being Victorians and capes, but most of those homes will have been renovated or rebuilt over the years, and so there will be a wide variety of design and colors to look at as you walk down the street. Most of these towns are situated on main state and county roads, with very few homes away from the main roads. The reason being that your home had to be within walking distance of everything that you needed to purchase. The next style that I've identified is similar to the first, but these are towns that were found in the late 1800s and early 1900s up to the Great Depression, and parts of the older towns that grew as demand for more housing increased. The large immigration waves of the time resulted in an increase of the population of the USA, and many of these people moved out of the cities after some time in the USA. This style of suburbs will usually border around a state or U.S. highway or a rail line, whether it is freight or passenger. The U.S. highway system predates the interstate system, and many towns were settled around U.S. and state highways as the population grew. Homes in these suburbs will be on mixed-size parcels of land, unlike the previous style. The older parts of these towns will be on smaller parcels of land, but homes that were built after the car will be on larger parcels. And the streets will almost always be straight streets that connect with the larger state and U.S. highways, allowing one to travel through a neighborhood. This is also when the evil strode began to make its appearance. Many of these towns will have an old core from the early 20th century and older and newer sections or rings depending on how the town grew. And many cities will have neighborhoods like these that grew out from the city center or began as independent towns and later merged with the larger growing city. Suburbs from this time will be characterized by roads and through streets cutting them up into large groups of blocks, which are then further cut into smaller sections by smaller residential streets. Most of the time the streets will be straight, making travel and speeding fairly easy. This is the style of suburb that will have the most cookie-cutter homes, as this was when the first large migration away from the city cores took place. Homes from this time will be capes, ranch-style homes, Archie bunker homes, brownstones and attached townhomes. The last two are some of the most prevalent cookie homes from this time, when developers filled numerous blocks with virtually identical homes. The third style is the first of the modern style of suburbs that became popular after World War II. Actually dates back to the Great Depression, when the federal government first became involved in home loans and began to dictate national standards to underwrite these loans. This was also the first car-dependent design, as many of these communities were built farther from train stations and businesses. In some cases there were purely residential towns built during this time that rely on neighboring towns to provide them with everything. This is also when car-centered businesses began to appear alongside the main roads, allowing the new car owners to drive from business to business at their leisure. This resulted in less through streets and more curved streets with cul-de-sacs and dead ends. With automobiles becoming popular, the goal was to slow down traffic speed on residential streets and feed car traffic into a few larger through streets. One of the most famous towns of this style is Levittown in New York State. Much of it was built after World War II for veterans with money saved up and looking to move out of the cities, but the curved streets and dead ends that characterize this town were first laid down as underwriting standards almost 20 years prior. The fourth style is what people associate with the suburbs. These are the modern suburbs, characterized by being far from retail, full of curved streets and dead ends, and the vast majority will have homeowners associations. Most of these modern suburbs will be far from retail and restaurants and will almost always require a car. And there will almost always be a WA that cares for common areas and will likely have rules on the exterior appearance of your home and property. As most of these homes will have been built after the 1973 oil shock and after the energy efficiency laws passed in the aftermath, these homes will also be constructed of many manufactured materials compared to the wood and brick of previous styles. In future videos I will explore each style in more detail.